Welcome to Audacity Works, a podcast inspired by and dedicated to the working artist, the creative entrepreneur, and generally, doing the damn thing. This exists on the premise that the world belongs to those who have the audacity to believe that their lives have value. This is for you. Welcome to Audacity Works. I am your host, Rachel Strickland, and this is episode 112. Some news and a request for you right off the bat. I'll do the request first. Will someone review my podcasts? I've got some stars on Spotify, which is lovely, and whoever did that, thank you so much. But I think on Apple Podcasts, you can say something. And as a very unilateral way of communicating, I would just love that. I don't check it very often because there's never been anything there. But then I was like, well, I should just ask. So I'm asking, if you like the podcast, if you listen to it every week, I'd love to know why. And that would be a great place to learn about that. So just putting a bug in your ear, no pressure, but a little bit of pressure. And now for the news. I have officially released the dates of Creatrix 2.0 in May. It's going to be May 13th through the 18th of 2025. And the applications for that will open to my patrons only at 9 a.m. on Saturday, January the 4th. Any remaining spots not taken will be opened to the wait list on Wednesday, January the 8th. So those are the dates for the application. Opening to patrons on January 4th, 9 a.m. Anything left will be open to the waitlist on January 8th, a few days later. I was going to open the applications in December, and I know I had said it here on the podcast, and then I was like, what am I doing? If you've never run a retreat before, it is a significant amount of administrative work, particularly around enrollment and just making sure everybody has what they need to move forward and that you have what you need to move forward. And I'm like, what am I doing? Why am I setting myself up to have the most intense week of administrative work, perhaps of the year, in December, which I have committed to myself is going to be low work December. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to keep my promises to myself. So I did. And it's a courtesy to me. It's a courtesy to you because nobody wants to be spending December stressed about trying to get up to get a spot in a retreat. So let's not do that. Let's let that be January's problem. I like it. I'll put the links to both of those things. The Patreon, if you want to be first in line, or the wait list otherwise. And thank you. So that's what I've decided. And actually, today is the last day of low work December. Mama is getting a break. No work December starts tomorrow. I'll still be releasing weekly podcasts, and I don't know if I'm going to get to Woo Corner by January 1st because who does anything on January 1st? But yeah, I'm going to be on the couch, or I don't know, probably going between the couch and the gym for the next 2 weeks and precious little else, because that's the time. 'Tis the season. 2 weeks off in December. Low work December has already yielded some pretty off the cuff Instagram story series. And I'm really enjoying it because I'm just posting whatever I want. So I'll probably continue to do that because I'm going to have all this cognitive space. Be it would be fun to ask my audience what kind of cheese they like best. P.S. For myself, the correct answer is Delice de Bourgogne. I don't know how to say it. Anyway, it's really soft. It's really fatty. It's really delicious. It's kind of sharp, and it just makes you want to have a huge glass of wine and the whole wheel of cheese, and that is kind of what I'm looking for in a cheese. So here we are, talking about cheese. This episode conveniently drops just a few days before the winter solstice. And in the ever-widening, overlapping Venn diagram of people who listen to me and follow me, that overlap is creatives and artists and witchy folks. So let's sit in that, shall we? A couple nights ago, I had a couple friends over to have an end-of-the-year bonfire and to burn some things that we no longer needed. I won't divulge what they burnt because it's personal. And Manflesh threw something in as well. But what I threw in, it was nothing like, I'm getting rid of this out of my life. It was more like, this needs to be redone. So I have a Bridget's cross that I made on Imbolc, February 1st, from the reeds that grow around the marsh, about a 20-minute walk from my house. And I meant to burn it the following Imbolc and make a new one. But guess where I was? Mexico. And thus it did not get burnt. And now it's December. And I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna go ahead and say thank you to that and burn it. And the other thing that I burnt was I was looking through, I guess you would call it like my witchy trunk. I have a whole section of my house. It's like a whole corner, a bookshelf, my altar table, and underneath the altar, and then there's like this pretty little storage box that I found at a thrift shop, and it's full of things that I don't often need but don't want to get rid of. And in there, I found this old list of intentions that I had written like 12 years ago, maybe even longer than that. It's when I was first living in San Francisco. And I was like, Jesus. And I'm like, you know what? If I pull this list of intentions out and I read it, I bet I will have gotten most of those things because it was 12 years ago. And I was right. And then I could just say thank you to that list and burn it. I didn't need to keep holding on to it. It had already served its time. And that felt really good to just release. You're like, thank you for your time. I release you. I also burnt I made calligraphy copies of the word of the year for my patrons of a certain tier. I think it's the Coven tier and higher this following year. I'm going to do it again this coming year. But that word, the word of 2024 for me was connect, because I was just all holed up in my little hobbit den. And I realized that if we moved away, it would be weeks and weeks and possibly months before anyone even noticed, other than, Mom. And I was like, that's sad. And I wanted to change that. So I just started reaching out and I let the word connect guide me all of 2024. It did a fantastic job. So I was able to say thank you to that word, burn it up in the December fire, literally. And then I took a nice little jaunt into my brain to try and think about my word for 2025. I have it, but I'm not going to tell you what it is yet. And the way I got it this year, I've never done this before, but I'm in the mafia. Okay, but not literally. Okay, but let me back up. My girl, Shantae Cofield, the movement maestro, who I quote here all the time and who I adore, has a membership called the Mafia. That's what I'm in. And Lex Lancaster was posting about how she found her word for 2025, and she decided to use chatgpt. Actually, it's Claude. It's a different kind of chatgpt. I'm mostly very indifferent to AI. It really gets on my nerves most of the time. I'm like, can you please stop giving me these AI features that I do not want to pay for? I do not care. I prefer human effort. However, I was curious when Lex made that suggestion. So I'm like, what the hell? I will try it for this purpose. And it was really interesting because it's exactly the same as journaling. Like you have to get your thoughts in order. You have to be able to verbalize and think critically and emotionally about what your year has been like and what are the areas that you want to change, and go down that whole rabbit hole so that you can find a word that's going to guide you for the rest of the following year. The difference is, when I was using Claude, it's like journaling. It is journaling, except the journal talks back to you and like will give you questions. And I didn't want to enjoy it because I resent AI so much, but I did. I did enjoy it. And it was really helpful. Like the suggestions that Claude gave back were helpful. And I can hear the eye rolls, and most specifically, I can see Alex shaking their head at me and noted. But I still did it, and I came to tell the truth. So I'm telling you about it. Used in this way, it was interesting because it was journaling, but the journal talks back to you. I'll put a link to it in the show notes so you can ignore it. Oh, by the way, I'm also going to put a link to that cheese that I mentioned earlier, because if you don't know about it, you need to. If you ever want to show up at someone's house for like happy hour and you want them to know that you respect and honor them and you appreciate being welcomed into their home, bring them that cheese. And if you're coming to my house, bring me that cheese. So the reason that I wanted to bring up the whole word of the year, I do enjoy doing that. It's been very helpful for me, particularly this year, is that it's a ritual. It's a ritual I do at the end of the year, almost exactly up to the winter solstice. And people are always asking me for rituals and like ways that they can observe the turning of the seasons. And what people seem to have a disconnect between is like these things that we do just sort of every year, like the year in review. I'll put a link to that as well. I do that every year, and I won't explain it because the link will explain it much better, and it's not exactly the subject of today's podcast. But people fail to see that the things that they're already doing at the end of the year, those are rituals. Like that is your magical practice. And I feel like there's this sort of cultural belief, particularly in like neo-paganism, that if you're going to like do a ritual, it needs to involve like drums and half an hour of meditation beforehand and a ritual bath and special candles that only get used on that for that reason. And all of those things are beautiful and fun, and they speak to our inner artists, our inner children, and I support all of them. But here's the thing, magic is easy. It doesn't have to be dressed up. Magic is easy, magic is everywhere. My girl Christina Canizares taught me that many years ago. Like me and my two witchy sisters out by the bonfire a couple nights ago. We didn't cast a circle. We didn't chant. We didn't sing any songs. All of those things would have been fun, but we didn't need to do those things. We just talked and burnt things that were symbols for us. And that was magic. That's what magic is. Magic is transmutation. It's alchemy. It's catharsis. Crying is magic. Nothing will transform you faster and more certainly than like a really good crying spell, because it's making something ephemeral, emotion, but very, very real, into actual flesh and blood. So yes, if you want to do ritual and you want like the pageantry and all of that comes with it, and set parameters around things, do those things. Do whatever lights you up, but don't feel like you have failed to observe a magical practice if you didn't dress it up in pageantry. I just feel like we put a lot of pressure on ourselves for a spiritual practice or a magical practice to look a certain way, which separates us from the very true fact that magic is in our design. Ritual and witchcraft are in our DNA by design, and it is my belief that magic isn't learned, it's remembered. And we have to be able to trust our own instincts surrounding this practice more than anything else. So this is just to say, if you are engaging in these sort of end of the year rituals that we do, like finding a word of the year for next year or doing a year in review. That's a reminder to myself to put a link to that in the show notes as well. You're already doing magic. You're already observing, and you're already maintaining a magical practice. I did do a little bit of research in preparation for this episode, and just into like where solstice celebrations come from. Spoiler, everywhere. Human beings have always noticed when the days were getting shorter, and they've always marked the passing of seasons, and they've always been able to identify, like, this is a really long night. It's dark for a long time. Let's do something to encourage the light to come back. How should we do that? Oh yeah, we all get the same idea. Let's light fires. Let's join together. Let's celebrate. Let's have toast. Let's eat food. Let's drink beverages and make merry. And that's what almost all the traditions that I have found. Yeah, there's like specific things that you could do that come from different cultures, but like the vibe is the same. Like the vibe throughout is the same. Like, it's dark out here. It's cold. We should gather together and like have a feast and make a ruckus and welcome the light to come back. And maybe that will ensure that it does come back. And hey, look, it worked. The light came back again. Now it's springtime and the days are getting longer. And isn't that just sort of like a sense of comfort? Next time you are drugged to some office party that you don't really want to go to, you are observing a practice from time immemorial, a human practice to celebrate during the darkest month of the year. How spectacularly witchy of you at your real estate conference's holiday party. Now, I've never been in the Southern Hemisphere for the holidays, and I wonder what that's like. Because I've talked to my Australian friends about that, and they're like, yeah, the Christmas decorations in Australia still have like snow on them. And I'm like, why? They said, because America and movies. I'm like, oh, that is so fucking interesting. Damn. But I'm curious, like, what it would be like to celebrate in that. I don't want to do it because I don't want to leave my house. But I'm curious, what it's like for you. Way, way over there. I'm looking at the time, and 'tis the season to be conducting our end of the year rituals and to be reflecting back and putting intentions forward, and all of that is already magical practice. All of that is already human ritual. And that's just beautiful. If you have requests for future episodes, you can always reach me on Instagram at Rachel Strickland Creative or on Patreon at Rachel Strickland Creative. This podcast is powered by Patreon, so extra special shout out to my patrons for standing with me, for supporting me, and for making this podcast, as well as everything else that I do, possible. This would not exist without you. Enjoy your longest night, my friends. The light will come back. Don't go back to sleep.